first of all, what is quantitative measurement? The whole idea of measurement is, of course, borrowed from the natural sciences and something that for a long time wasn't really thought of in the social realm as measurement. So the closeness between quantitative social science and natural science in the general approach is reflected in that. First, to a large extent, we will focus on quantitative conceptions of measurement, and then if we know that as a backdrop, we can look at qualitative measurement and how we can think about that in comparison. So first, on quantitative measurement. Quantitative measurement is simply the recording of systematic observations into numerical equivalents. So we make some observation. We don't do that just because we are at a certain place or are doing something, but we do it systematically. So we have a rule book that tells us how to make the observations, and it also tells us how to encode these observations into numerical equivalents. It can be very simple things, such as that you have a 5-point scale in a questionnaire, and whatever response is ticked there, then this number is the numerical equivalent of the observation. Often the respondent, him or herself, encodes this into numerical equivalents. Okay. The records of observations about units are then called data. So you write that up in a systematic way, these observations, the numerical equivalents you record, and these records are called what we call data. They are usually stored in a spreadsheet-like format, as you see here, right? The units are conventional, where the unit for which you make a recording is conventionally the rows. The variables, so the dimensions along which you observe something, those are in the columns. So, for instance, age would be a variable, or education would be a variable. And each observation that you make is a cell. So for one unit and one variable, we have one observation that we record, and that is the data cell. Okay. Example, we ask in a telephone survey a person to indicate their political interest. Instead of the person's literal response, mine is through the roof, you bet, we record 5, very high, on a scale from 1 to 5. So you ask the person the question, the person doesn't specifically answer on the scale that we want the person to respond on, but then the interviewer in this case has the instruction to not read the scale, but to code the response of the person on that scale. And so we now got a numerical equivalent. Much more common it is that the respondent themselves record this on the scale and enter the record. And in this case, of course, we reduce complexity a lot. We don't care for anything else except the degree of political interest that we measure, and we measure it in a way that is most comparable across the different units. So we try to keep everything as similar or equivalent as possible. In contrast, if you do a qualitative measurement, we would record the literal response and even the tone, volume, stuttering, or something, depending on our specific interest, that can provide additional hints as to what the person really did want to convey. Right? So mine is through the roof, you bet, is of course richer than very high if you really want to look at the nuances. But we don't want the nuance, we want the comparability across the different units in numeric terms so that we can statistically analyze that later on.